Have you ever felt that sensation? That burning heat rising up your neck, the desperate wish for the ground to swallow you whole, the overwhelming feeling that all eyes are on you, judging, condemning. That's shame. Not just an emotion, but, as Carl Jung so powerfully put it, a soul-eating emotion. What if I told you that this feeling, this visceral, paralyzing sensation that most of us would do anything to avoid, might actually be one of the most important emotional experiences of your life? What if shame, when understood properly, could be the doorway to your authentic self rather than its prison? Today, we're going on a journey into the depths of the human psyche to understand one of our most primal, most universal, and most misunderstood emotions. By the end of our exploration, you might never look at shame the same way again, the universal shadow. Imagine walking through a crowded room completely naked while everyone stares at you. That nightmare scenario captures the essence of what shame feels like: exposure, vulnerability, judgment. But why does this emotion have such power over us? Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist whose insights into the human mind continue to shape our understanding of psychology, recognized shame as more than just an unpleasant feeling. He saw it as a force that could literally consume our spirit from within. Shame, Jung wrote, is a soul-eating emotion that shadows the spirit and devours self-esteem. This wasn't mere poetic language. Jung understood that shame goes beyond temporary discomfort. It attacks our very sense of worthiness to exist. What makes shame so different from other difficult emotions like sadness or anger is its target. While sadness might be about a situation and anger directed toward a person or event, shame is about who we are. It doesn't say you made a mistake. It whispers you are a mistake. Jung observed that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And nowhere is this more evident than in our relationship with shame. We'll go to extraordinary lengths to avoid confronting those parts of ourselves that trigger shame, those aspects we fear would make us unlovable if exposed. The shadow self and shame central to Jung's understanding of the human psyche was his concept of the shadow, those parts of ourselves that we repress, deny, and hide from. Conscious awareness. The shadow contains everything we deem unacceptable, not just our destructive impulses, but often our deepest vulnerabilities and unmet needs. Everyone carries a shadow, Jung noted, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Our shame often lives in this shadow realm, growing stronger in darkness, gaining power precisely because we refuse to look at it. What's fascinating is that Jung didn't see the shadow as something to be eliminated. Rather, he believed that wholeness required integration of these disowned parts. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, he wrote, but by making the darkness conscious. This is where shame becomes not just destructive, but potentially transformative. When we have the courage to look at what shames us, to bring it into consciousness rather than keeping it locked in shadow, we begin a process of reclaiming parts of ourselves that have been lost. Think about the things that trigger your deepest shame. Is it a physical feature you try to hide? A traumatic experience you've never spoken about? A desire or need you consider unacceptable? A past mistake you can barely acknowledge even to yourself? These are the places where your soul is being eaten away, where your energy is being consumed by the effort of hiding, denying, and repressing. Toxic shame versus healthy shame. Not all shame functions the same way. Jung and later psychologists have helped us understand the difference between toxic shame and what we might call appropriate or healthy shame. Healthy shame acts as a moral compass. It's the feeling that helps us recognize when we've violated our own values or harmed others. This form of shame can lead to repair, growth, and deeper connection. It says, This action doesn't align with who I truly am, not I am fundamentally flawed. Toxic shame, by contrast, is that global sense of being defective at your core. It's not about something you've done, but about your very being. This is the shame that Jung referred to as soul-eating, because it consumes your sense of worth and belonging in the world. Jung understood that many people carry this toxic shame from childhood experiences where they were made to feel fundamentally unworthy. The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents, he observed. Many of us internalize shame not because of anything inherently wrong with us, but because we absorbed the unresolved shame of those who raised us. What's particularly insidious about toxic shame is how it drives us to create false selves. Personas designed to win approval and hide what we fear is our true, unacceptable nature. The persona, Jung wrote, is a complicated system of relations between individual consciousness and society. Fittingly enough, a kind of mask, designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and on the other to conceal the true nature of the individual. While these masks may temporarily protect us from rejection, they disconnect us from our authentic being. We exhaust ourselves maintaining images that we believe will keep us safe, all while the underlying shame continues to grow. Shame and the collective unconscious. One of Jung's most revolutionary ideas was the collective unconscious, a shared, psychic structure that contains the accumulated experiences of humanity across time. Within this collective unconscious reside archetypes, universal patterns, and images that appear in myths, dreams, and cultural symbols worldwide. Shame, in Jung's framework, connects deeply to several archetypes, particularly what he called the shadow archetype, the repository of qualities we reject in ourselves, and the persona, the social mask we present to the world. In each of us, Jung wrote, there is another whom we do not know. This unknown other contains both our greatest gifts and our deepest sources of shame. When we're under the influence of toxic shame, we often project the disowned parts of ourselves onto others, seeing in them what we cannot accept in ourselves. This is why shame is so closely linked to judgment of others. Have you noticed how the qualities that most irritate or disgust you in other people often reflect disowned aspects of yourself? Jung observed that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Our strongest reactions frequently point to our unacknowledged shame. On a collective level, shame drives many societal problems. Communities scapegoat certain groups, projecting collective shadow material onto them. Jung might say that racism, sexism, homophobia, and other forms of discrimination often function as externalized shame, ways of disowning parts of our collective humanity by projecting them onto others. Where love rules, there is no will to power, Jung wrote, and where power predominates, their love is lacking. The one is the shadow of the other. Shame-based systems always rely on power over dynamics rather than love-based connection. The path through shame. If shame is indeed soul-eating, how do we stop it from consuming us? Jung's approach offers profound guidance. First, we must develop awareness. Until you make the unconscious conscious, Jung stated, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Bringing shame into consciousness, naming it, feeling it, understanding its origins, begins to reduce its power over us. This doesn't mean endlessly analyzing past hurts, but rather developing what Jung called active imagination, a way of dialoguing with the unconscious through creative expression. Writing, art, movement, or simply having an internal conversation with your shame can begin this process of integration. The acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole. Moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life, Jung wrote. This acceptance doesn't mean resignation to harmful patterns, but rather an honest recognition of all that you are, both light and shadow. Jung emphasized that healing happens through relationship, both with ourselves and others. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances, he observed. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. When we risk showing our authentic selves to others who respond with acceptance rather than rejection, shame begins to lose its grip. This is why community is so essential to healing shame. In isolation, shame thrives. In connection, real connection, where we're known and accepted, shame begins to transform. Jung might say that when we find the courage to reveal our shadow aspects in appropriate relationships, we discover that what we thought would make us unlovable can actually deepen our capacity for genuine intimacy. Individuation. Beyond shame, Jung's ultimate vision for human development was what he called individuation, the process of becoming one's unique self, integrating all aspects of the psyche into a cohesive whole. Shame stands as one of the greatest obstacles to this process because it keeps parts of ourselves exiled in the shadow. The privilege of a lifetime, Jung wrote, is to become who you truly are. This becoming requires us to face and integrate shame rather than being controlled by it. What's remarkable about Jung's perspective is that he saw even our most painful emotions as potential doorways to greater wholeness. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, he acknowledged. The journey through shame is indeed painful, but the alternative, living a divided life where parts of yourself remain exiled, is ultimately more painful. I am not what happened to me, Jung stated. I am what I choose to become. This powerful declaration offers a path beyond shame. While we may not have chosen the experiences that instilled shame in us, we can choose how we respond to them now. The alchemy of shame. Jung was fascinated by alchemy, not just as a proto-science aiming to transform base metals into gold, but as a symbolic system representing the transformation of consciousness. He saw the alchemical process as a metaphor for psychological transformation, where the prima materia, raw material, of our unprocessed emotions could be transformed into psychological gold. Shame might be the ultimate prima materia, the raw, painful substance that, when worked with consciously, can yield extraordinary transformation. Jung might say that shame, rather than something to be eliminated, is the very material of our growth when approached with awareness and compassion. In all chaos there is a cosmos, Jung wrote. In all disorder a secret order. Even in the chaotic, painful experience of shame, there exists the potential for a new order, a more integrated way of being. This alchemical perspective invites us to ask different questions about shame. Instead of, how can I get rid of this feeling? We might ask, what is this shame trying to show me about myself? What disowned parts of me are asking to be reclaimed? What truth is trying to emerge? The collective healing of shame. We live in what many would call a shame-based culture, one that profits from making us feel inadequate, that exploits our insecurities, that often encourages comparison rather than connection. Jung would likely see our current mental health crisis as partially a crisis of unacknowledged collective shame. The world will ask you who you are, Jung wrote, and if you don't know, the world will tell you. In a culture that constantly tells us we're not enough, not attractive enough, not successful enough, not perfect enough, we must reclaim the authority to define ourselves. This isn't just individual work, but collective healing. When we begin to speak openly about shame, when we create spaces where vulnerability is honored rather than exploited, we contribute to a shift in consciousness that extends beyond ourselves. Jung believed that individual transformation affects the collective. The salvation of the world consists in the salvation of the individual soul, he wrote. As each of us does our own work with shame, we create ripples that touch others, gradually transforming the cultural waters in which we all swim. Living beyond shame. What would a life beyond the grip of toxic shame look like? Not a life without the capacity for appropriate shame, that moral compass that helps us stay aligned with our values, but a life where shame no longer eats away at our soul. Jung might describe such a life as one of radical authenticity, where we no longer need to hide parts of ourselves for fear of rejection. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, he wrote. This becoming is a lifelong journey, not a destination. Living beyond shame doesn't mean never feeling it. Rather, it means developing a new relationship with shame when it arises, one characterized by curiosity rather than avoidance, compassion rather than judgment. No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven, Jung observed, unless its roots reach down to hell. Our capacity for joy, connection, and meaning is directly proportional to our willingness to explore those parts of ourselves we'd rather not see, including our shame. This is perhaps Jung's most hopeful message about shame, that the very emotion that seems most likely to destroy us can, when approached with consciousness, become the doorway to our most authentic self. There is no birth of consciousness, he wrote, without pain. The choice before us, so we stand at a crossroads when it comes to shame. We can continue to allow it to eat away at our souls, to keep us small and disconnected from ourselves and others. Or we can turn toward it with courage and curiosity, recognizing it as a difficult but potentially transformative guide on our journey toward wholeness. Your vision will become clear, Jung promised, only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Perhaps this is the ultimate antidote to shame, this awakening to who we truly are, beyond the stories of inadequacy we've absorbed, beyond the masks we've worn to protect ourselves, beyond the parts we've disowned in shadow. Jung reminds us that the shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Your journey with shame will be uniquely yours. The aspects of yourself that trigger shame, the pathways that lead to healing, the expressions of your authentic being, these will differ from anyone else's. But the fundamental truth remains. Shame need not be the final word on who you are. As Jung so powerfully expressed, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. Perhaps the most revolutionary act in a shame-based culture is simply this: to choose to become fully yourself, not perfect, not flawless, but whole. To bring all parts of yourself, even those that shame has told you to hide, into the light of compassionate awareness. To recognize, as Jung did, that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and to do it anyway, because on the other side of that terror lies freedom. Freedom from the soul-eating power of shame. Freedom to live from your authentic center rather than your protective shell. Freedom to connect deeply with others because you're no longer hiding from yourself. As we conclude this exploration, I invite you to consider one final question. What part of yourself has shame been keeping you from embracing? And what might become possible in your life if you were to reclaim that disowned piece of your wholeness? In the words of Carl Jung, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. May you find the courage to look, and in looking, to heal the shame that has kept you separate from your truest self. After all, you're not just your shame. You are the awareness that can witness it, work with it, and ultimately transform it from a soul-eating force into the very material of your becoming.